Good evening, everybody, or whenever you watch this, I suppose, because it's YouTube, so it could be evening, could be morning, could be afternoon. Hello and welcome to Martin and David Talk Rangers. I'm Martin Douglas. I'm your host, and I am joined by Heart and Hand gaffer David Edgar. David, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you? Well, part of the fit, but everything else, I have no complaints over. The fit, but I've got a lot of complaints over. And I dare say we'll get into them over the next.
I don't have to. We don't want to. We can
so.
just talk randomness.
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the listeners might prefer that, but I'm sure it's nothing that the listeners aren't feeling themselves. But no, apart from that, mate, I cannot complain. And always nice to be here and chatting to your good self.
You don't know me well enough yet. To be saying chatting to your good self. Right, I've got to ask, even though it pains me greatly, how was Dubai?
Oh, it was wonderful. Was invited over by the Dubai RSC to host their Legends Weekend. So it was Mark Haitley, Kevin Thompson, and Lee McCulloch that were over, and had a wonderful time. The boys at the club and girls were really, really kind to us. Really nice, actually. Got to see a lot of cool stuff. Dubai, first I've been, amazing place. It's too warm. But there was nothing they could do about that. I did ask.
Isn't everywhere too warm for you, though?
For me, yeah, it is.
It was Iceland. Oh, it was too warm.
I've hit that age though where I get to say in Scotland it's too cold, and when I'm abroad I get to say it's too warm, and do so with no sense of irony whatsoever. But we had a wonderful time, mate. It's very, very nice people. It was good. Apart from Saturday night at the club. And they've got a beautiful club there, loads of great facilities. Saturday night we sat down to watch the game, and it was just dire, just absolutely dismal. So back on Tuesday to the news that we appointed a CEO. Yay. And he actually looks as though he might be somebody who's qualified to run a football club, and more importantly, I think the fact the noises that are coming out, and certainly the noises that are coming out at his end as well, which is more important, are that he has a mandate to run the club. Wouldn't have taken the job if he didn't. So that's all important. So, there's good news, but that won't improve the team. We need it done badly. My God, but it's not going to improve the team over the next 2 to 3 weeks, but long term, we couldn't go on like this. So good news on the CEO front, but as I say, tempered by what I thought was an anemic, constipated display at the weekend.
We will touch on that. I'm guessing you obviously on Heart and Hand have done the game to death. I've done the game.
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't. No, I didn't get back till Tuesday. So. Oh no! When I'm away, I'm away. I don't leave it to the guys.
I tried that. I did try that. I went away for 3 days, and I only had 3 shows out in the time that I was away, and 2 of them get fucked up.
Right. Okay. Well, I've got a member. Due to my fact, 1, I'm not a control freak, and 2, I'm quite happy to pass work on to the lower orders. The boys have got loads of experience of doing stuff like that, so no, I've got no concerns. But when I'm away. So no, I didn't go into too much. I mean, I suppose I did on Saturday night, but to a smaller audience. There was only like 300 people in the room at the time. And I had help from ex-players who could explain why it was going wrong, as opposed to just us going, although it was interesting watching the game with them, because they went through it the same as we did, the frustration and the hands thrown in the air. Their supporters too, and they're going through it as well. But yeah, it was just grim, wasn't it? And there's no excuse for that. It wasn't off the back of a bad performance or a European performance. It's 2 weeks. We come back. We're at home. The United's travel hadn't been great, and the problem with that performance, Martin, isn't the one-off performance, because look, it happens. We accept that. That's not any different to how we usually play. Maybe the first half was a bit worse and the second half was a bit better, but the overall result is the same. It's that we're not good to watch. I can't tell if there's any discernible style of play. Maybe you can.
Did you not see flashes? And I've made this point. Look, I've tried to. I always try my best to play. I was going to say both sides, but that can be cut up and put out there on the interweb. Um, devil's dick advocate. I've always tried my best to do that, so that when 99.9% of people are on side A, I'll try and pick up side B, even if I don't.
No,
like
and it's important to do that. And I know what you're saying. I have seen at points through the season times where I've thought, all right, we're on the right track, but it never lasts, it never sustains. And on Saturday, no, I don't. And the reason for that is that the performance improved because of individuals, because Czerny stepped up a gear, and because there was some nice moments from him and Danilo and Hadji. The structural issues remain with Rangers, which is that we are predictable, which means also that people now are knowing that if you can shut down Czerny, basically you'll shut us down. We've got one method of playing, and that we start abysmally slowly, and that seems a constant problem. That it takes us either something to go wrong, concede a goal for us to snap into life, or half time for a reset. So I think, had I seen, and I did, when Clement came in, one of the things I noticed is the team were doing things like they were getting to the byline a lot more than they'd been doing. They were moving the ball forward quicker. There were things that were different. Now, to me, it seems we go out and we play the same system every week, and the idea is hope that Czerny, or if Lawrence is there, Lawrence or Bajami will do something. And that, to me, isn't sustainable for success. You need to have a team, I think, that's in harmony. And that first half of the weekend, mate, that didn't look like a team that's coached to me, and we're so easy to play against. And the United are not a good side, no disrespect, they're not a great side, but they came, they worked hard, and that was all they had to do. And okay, you may say, well, the keeper's made a great save at the end, which he has, but in a one-off, of course we'll go, sometimes you have bad games, right? Of course we have. But Rangers are averaging a goal a game in the Premier League. That's not bad luck. And in one of the games we scored 6, so it's actually less than that, really, if you take that one game out. We're not creative. We're not good to watch. We rely on the odd spark of brilliance from someone, and when they don't come often enough, which they don't, then... And that's not a dig at Czerny, by the way. He's doing everything he can, but he needs help. And do you enjoy watching us?
No, I was at the game on Saturday. One of those rare occasions where I managed to get to go because of the type of podcast that I do. It makes it difficult to go.
Yeah.
I went to the Hearts game. I went to the Dundee United game, and it was basically just copy paste.
Yeah, it's the same game, and that's what I mean. That's why we can't, I think, go. Because I'm like you, right? See, after we've been, doing quite well, if we play badly, I don't slaughter them, right? I just go, right, we'll see what happens in the next game. I think I'm realistic in that sense. I'm great at the time, but day after I go, right, okay. But this is what we play. Nobody can say that it was different to what, as I say, maybe a bit worse in the first half and a bit better in the second than it usually is. But when you go and watch Rangers, it's not entertaining. Other sides are not having to do anything particularly innovative to stay in games against us. And they're in games against us pretty much. Even games we're winning, it's 1-0 or 2-1, or we got a late goal to make it 2-0. It just feels bland and dull, and it's not leading to anything. That's the other thing. I think sometimes you can watch the side and sense that something's coming, and I don't get that sense. And that's why, Saturday night I tweeted, I wasn't on my phone much over the weekend, but I tweeted it. I said, it's not going to change under Clement. And the reason that I say that is it's been long enough now. If it was going to change, we'd see signs of it, and I can't see those signs. So that's why, keep Clement as long as they want, but it's not going to get better. It's going to stay roughly like this, because I just don't think that if he had the ability to change it, then I think he would have done it by now. It just stands to reason, doesn't it? So yeah, I didn't take anything positive out the game at the weekend. Yeah, it's getting worse rather than better. That sums it up.
There's been a few people who have said to me that they see a difference in Clement in terms of his persona, his attitude, or whatever. Now, I don't know if that's true. I've never met the man. I've never spoke to the man. Obviously, you spend a lot of time in the press conferences. You get to ask him questions. Obviously, you weren't there, obviously, after the Dundee United game. But
yeah.
have you noticed a change in the way that he reacts to questions or his personality, or does he still feel like the kind of same person?
I wasn't there on Saturdays, and there's no scientific way to measure this, right? This is just an opinion, from me. But I thought on Saturday he looked like he knew it, basically, that he knew this is coming in, because he wasn't spiky. He's usually, if he gets a tough, he's usually quite prepared to fight his corner, basically. And a lot of the times I know that we as supporters are going, I don't agree with that at all, but he does it, and he didn't at the weekend. There was almost an acceptance, I suppose is the word I'm looking for, at the weekend. So I did think, but I haven't seen it yet. I'm told his press conference today was more in line with what we would expect from him in terms of that kind of thing. But I've long said that for me, the only kind of valuable press conferences are the post-match ones, because you get people, right after it. Mm-hmm. And to me, it looked a bit like, I don't know why this keeps happening. And that happens to managers, it happens. And it doesn't mean he's a bad manager. I know that some people might not want to hear that right now. It just means he's not the right fit for a league or club. And it happens all over the place. He could go somewhere else and be successful. He's been successful somewhere else. And equally, we've had managers, Gerrard, who was successful here and then wasn't when he left. So there's a lot of factors in that, other than just, but I kind of look at this Rangers team at the moment, and we do a show on Heart and Hand where we look back, we go through month by month, every match, every manager since 1998. We started with the Dick Advocaat, and we've worked through, and we've just started Gerrard on the summer of 2018. And how sometimes people say mad things to exaggerate a point when they're angry. Mm-hmm. We all do it, right? Exaggeration is easy. That's why we get phrases like a squillion, right? But I looked at the Rangers team in the first couple of months under Gerrard, and I thought, I'd fancy that team to beat this current one. And I don't say that lightly, but I genuinely would, because it was organised, it had a shape, and it had a better front line than we have currently. For me, the issues kind of stem, this is not rocket science, the team isn't quick enough in either thought or execution. It doesn't move the ball quickly enough. They all want extra touches. That's maybe a confidence thing. When we get something happening, it's the rare occasions when they don't do that. And the goal at the weekend was an example of that. Quick, moved the ball quickly, worked the space, got through, good finish, right? But there's a lack of pace in the team. Secondly, I think Bajrami out on the left, he looks a wee bit lost to me moments. But you think, what could he be doing if he was in his actual position? And lastly, Dessers is, that performance at the weekend was unacceptable. And I know that a lot of people are fed up hearing about him, but we will not get anywhere when we have a striker who at home to Dundee United takes 8 touches and gives the ball away 4 times. And I think that was the start from the weekend. I'm sure the listeners will correct me if I'm wrong. But
how many people, David, point out the amount of goals that he scores as an excuse? Not an excuse, as a kind of answer back to what you're saying. I'm in complete agreement with you, by the way. And I have been for a while now about Cyril, that, do you know what? He might score you 22 goals a season.
Yeah.
But in games where it really, really matters, like you say, 8 touches, he'll give the ball away 4 times.
And that's the thing. Rangers can't get anywhere with a striker who some weeks can be 9 out of 10, but a lot of other weeks can be 2 out of 10. Mm-hmm. You have to have a base level. Sasa Papac, 7 out of 10 every week. We love that, because you knew you didn't have to worry about that area. Sasa's got that, right? That's what you need if you want to win things. You can't be brilliant one week and unacceptably bad the following week. And that's what Dessers is. He's wildly inconsistent. He doesn't have a baseline. He doesn't have a kind of 6, 7 out of 10. He either gets you goals or he does nothing. And at the weekend, there was just nothing there. And Danilo's come on, he's missed a sitter, but he, at least he was contributing and moving, and it's no coincidence. But then, again, I don't want to just pick on it, but like Diamande is a 10 I have seen nothing from
Nothing,
Diamande in that position to suggest that he can play that position. And again, Hadji, who came on, who's miles off being match fit, by the way, you could see that, but he still was much more dangerous in that position than Diamande. And I think that's my frustration with Clement and why I think we should change managers. But just in case anyone's, thinking, oh, you're no saying it, I think we should change managers, right? I think Clement should go, and I think we should get someone else in. So just to be very up and open about that, and I hope I'm wrong, by the way. I hope he turns it around, and in a month's time, people who've watched this are coming to me and say, you wanted him sacked as well, and since then we've won X amount, right? And I'll gladly go, I was wrong and you're right, but right now I don't see it. And it's because of things like at the weekend, you start Diamande as a 10, you start Dessers up front. What do you expect? What do you think is going to happen? It's just the same thing. Even at the weekend, when I see him bringing on Yilmaz, and I think, oh, right, are we pushing Yefte up now? Maybe pushing Bajra? No, it's a straight swap. Then I see Igamani coming on. I go, great, finally, 2 up top. We'll see give them a different challenge. No, Igamani goes out on the left. It's the same mistakes every week from the coach down. Before anyone says it, shit show above them. We all know it. We've talked about it long and weary, and it's true. But to me, that doesn't excuse this Rangers team. Doesn't look fit to me. Doesn't look as though it's got better stamina than the other sides, which it should have because it's got the best facilities. Doesn't look as though it's got match plans for each match. And I just thought at the weekend that looked, in the first half, it looked like 11 random players vaguely trying to deflect the ball towards the opposition goal. And in the second half, it looked like the 2 or 3 good players trying to win the game on their own. It didn't look like a side well coached to me. And for that reason, I think Clement should go.
Listen, I've been saying it for a while now. And I think there is people out there who think that you take pleasure in saying that.
Oh, Christ, no.
I don't take pleasure in saying that about a Rangers player, never mind a Rangers manager.
Yeah,
I hope every single time I'm negative, I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, we'd have far more. That is far more enjoyable to come on here and be talking about a win, and I loved that, and that was great play. So, no, anyone who thinks that it's pleasurable, and I've mentioned before, better Rangers are doing, the more people listen to my shows. So there's even the nakedly selfish version. But even I'm at the weekend there, right? I'm at the Dubai club. Now these boys, because of kick-off time, same as the guys in Canada or Australia or America or New Zealand, right? I know guys, supporters clubs in all those areas. Kick-off times are weird, right? Yeah. Because obviously time differences. Now they're out there, keeping Rangers a big international club, being out there and trying to fly the flag. For us in these countries. If Rangers are winning, people will come out and watch the games. If Rangers are playing the way we're playing, they were telling me, if a game's on at like 2 a.m, guys are like, I'm just going to watch that in the house. Or even, I might not watch it, I'll just see what the result was in the morning, I'll maybe watch it back. So we all suffer, from the guys going to the game, to the guys going into their work on a Monday morning to face, God knows what, after a bad weekend, to the likes of myself that have to talk about Rangers, and it's it gets me down when we're not doing well. We all suffer, and all we want right now, because I think that we're realistic about where we are in terms of this season. I'd like to enjoy watching Rangers. I'd like to see a team that gets paid considerably more than 10 of the other teams in the league putting a few goals by these teams. I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to ask for, Martin. I don't think any Rangers fan is being unreasonable expecting that. And I'd like to see us begin to develop younger guys. You and I talked about Finlay Curtis. I think he scored about 606 goals since we talked about it.
He has travelled to Nice. To Nice.
Yeah, but, why is he not getting 15, 20 minutes at the end of a game? And just there's so many things wrong with the club that I think there comes a point where it's too far gone. And I think that's where we are with Clement. I don't know anybody, and I know a lot, and I know a very broad church of Rangers fans, right, with opinions on everything, but wildly different from A to Z, right, or Z, sorry. And I know loads and loads of people like that. I don't know anybody who's saying, I think he's going to turn it around. The only thing I've heard from people about keeping him is we can't keep sack managers. And that's a pretty desperate reason to keep someone who you don't think is going to do it for you.
No, you can't use that as a reason.
No.
You just cannot use that as a reason. By the way, see that show you were talking about that you do in Heart and Hand where you go month by month? That was the very, very first show I ever listened to on Heart and Hand.
Oh, cool.
And I
can't believe we're still doing it 7 years later. But
I know. Do you know, I was so... It's a show that I loved and I wanted to do it myself, but I thought I just can't steal like the exact show. So I never...
Don't worry about it.
No, it's too much research, David.
Oh, well, there's that. I'm very lucky that I couldn't tell you, what I had for lunch today, but I can tell you who delivered the corner for a goal against Airdrie in 1991. Some stuff's seared in my brain and some stuff isn't. But yeah, so another grim performance. Now, we're away in East tomorrow night. Wouldn't stun me if we did quite well there.
Yeah.
We've seen this with this Rangers team. But then that isn't going to change it for me. It's what we're going to do when we play St Johnstone. Now, let's look at this run of fixtures that Rangers had when we came back. Dundee United at home, that should be 3 points. St Johnstone away, that should be 3 points. Kilmarnock at home, that should be 3 points. Ross County away, that should be 3 points. And we've failed at the first hurdle.
Yep.
And teams are looking forward to playing us just now because it's still a free hit for them. If they get beat by Rangers, then fair enough. But they're all thinking we can get something. And when that happens, it becomes more difficult. And I'll give you another example of that. Manchester City right now. Because teams, they're not beat in the head before they play them. Mm-hmm. And they're going out and they're having a go, and that makes the games more difficult for City, and that's what you're seeing. I mean, a team that were 3-0 down at the Etihad last year, they give up, right? They shut up shop. Let's not get beat 6. Fine, they'll come back and get a draw. And that is kind of what's happening with Rangers, because Dundee United came and they knew if we can keep it tight, keep our shape, nick a goal, then we've got a good chance of getting something. And unfortunately, they were proved right. So I think we need a new boss coming in. I think we need somebody who's got a definitive style, because I think football has changed.
Yeah.
And whether I like it or not, and there are a lot of things about modern game, Martin, I don't. Football has changed. I think you need to have somebody who knows exactly what he wants to do, and more importantly, somebody who his style is about breaking down teams that sit in. There's no point hiring a guy who's maybe had good results playing but never faces that, like a smaller club, in my opinion, because then you're hiring a guy based on him doing one thing and then telling him when he comes in, oh, by the way, we don't need that, we need this. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Now, just remember that because obviously you've got the press access and stuff, if you say any name, then it could become out there as David Edgar says,
always does.
Such and such is going to be the next Rangers. So, David, who's going to be the next Rangers? No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
No.
Well, I mean,
I've got a better question for you.
Yes.
I'm hoping that you can answer and give us a wee bit of the insights into the internal running of the football club.
Oh Christ, I'll do my best. But
why is Philip Clement still Rangers manager? If you can see it, I can see it. Every other supporter can see it, and the media can see it. I'm pretty sure the board can see it.
Yeah,
the two people that are there. Why is he still manager?
I think firstly there's a reluctance because of that. We keep changing manager thing. And by the way, it's not new at Rangers that the board, and this is not just this board, the previous boards, prefer to keep a manager and look for reasons to retain them rather than to get rid of them, right? Some clubs are the opposite. Some clubs, as soon as it goes wrong, are just out the door. But we're not like that. And I think it's a historic thing. I think it's, part of the culture of the club. But again, football has changed. We are not going to go another 150 years with, 20 managers. That's not going to happen. Okay, so football has changed in the UK over the last 20 years or so. But if you look at even the last few, Beale probably got a bit longer. Gio got a bit longer, although he did the Europa League run the year before and the Cup, obviously, to do that. And I think, there's always that, Caixinha should have went, let's face it, the day after Progress.
Yeah.
And he was there another 3 months. It was the end of October before he went. So I think that culturally, there's that. Secondly, we don't know what the contract details are about it, about whether there's a cost involved if he goes at a certain time or not. I don't know, and I think that's the reason for it. Because let's face it, he's not got a lot of road left to run, has he? If we were to get beat at the weekend, and I don't think we will, by the way. I think we will win that game. But that when you get to that stage where it's game by game, it becomes very, very difficult for a manager to stay. I suppose maybe at the back of their mind they're thinking if he wins the League Cup, that would probably buy him the season, which it probably would. It would get him through to the end of the season. But if he...
sorry to interrupt, David. See if you were sitting in the Rangers board right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you were CEO or you were chairman or whatever, you had a high position, you had power at Rangers. Mm-hmm. Would you honestly be looking at Clement and the Rangers team right now and thinking, I think we can get a result on the 15th of December?
Well, I think the fact the CEO doesn't start to the 16th maybe answers that question.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that's a part of it. Maybe they want somebody to, to be there, so the splatter doesn't go on a new guy kind of thing. But yeah, I'd be surprised, I think, if Clement turned it around, and delighted if Clement turned it around. And you know me, I'm an optimist, right? And I do look for evidence that it's going to get better before I go on a manager, right? Because I don't want us to be a club that changes managers constantly, because it means things aren't going well. So I think that, for me, if there were even signs that I could say, I still believe, with Gerrard, I'd never lost faith, even at the really low, even, post Hamilton and post Hearts. I still thought we're on the right track. He can do this. And maybe that was a bit of blind faith, because Gerrard and the glamour and everything. Maybe that was the reason. But I don't lie on shows or on these shows. I know some people always seem to think that you get given a script by the club. This is a club that took 6 months to appoint a CEO, by the way, but they're giving out scripts to podcasters to say, they're that organised. And I wouldn't do it anyway. And the reason I don't lie is that I'd get caught, because I'd forget, right? It's, I couldn't keep up with all my lies. So when I start to feel something, I'll say it. And I haven't seen enough from, and people say, well, what about his first 6 months? And I'm like, great, but in football, it's your last few months that count, because otherwise we could hire a guy who was successful in 1985, right? Mm-hmm. But it's what have you done lately? Since March, Rangers have been progressively worse. Since March, he has a win rate of under 50%. That is unacceptable at Rangers. And over a period of, it's now 8 months, okay, the summer, so we'll say 6 months of competitive action, a win rate of under 50% is unacceptable to me as a Rangers supporter.
Do you think the reaction of the supporters has been actually quite mild? I got asked this the other day, and we looked back, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but we had a bit of a laugh over Celtic fans' meltdown when they were throwing sharks at the players and etc. and getting off their nut because they had lost one league in what seems about 20. Do you think there's been a kind of mild reaction of, I wouldn't even say anger, just apathy from the support?
I think that's been because it's I blame them for that, the club, not the fans. Apathy is the last thing that you want, and this is the danger, is when you actually get people just shrugging. That's worse, believe it or not, than being.
That's what it felt like against that. There was the odd person shouting, but most of the fans were just, nah.
Rangers fans, when they're upset, vote with their feet. And that is the way. And I know people say, they've got your season ticket money, but they don't have the money you'd spend on a pie and on hospitality and on a programme, etc., right? Revenue goes down. They've got European games. If they don't fill those, then they look at the reasons why. That is how things get changed at football clubs. If it was about protest, the Glazers wouldn't own Man United, right? That I know people want to feel that. I organised protests when I was at the Supporters Trust, and it didn't make a blind bit of difference.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there were big protests. It was hundreds and sometimes more than that. People outside Ibrox, right? That doesn't change it. What changes it, in my experience, is that when the boards look about and Ibrox is 2/3 full, that they go, oh, right. And that's what's happening. And that doesn't need lead, by the way. That doesn't need an organised thing. That because people make the decision on their own. Now, they're all desperate to come back and watch Rangers. And that is, if I was the CEO, that's what I'd be excited about, Martin, is that right now you have a support that is incredibly loyal, that is incredibly supportive in terms of the money that it will put into the club, and it wants to. It really does. It's desperate to get behind something. The problem is they haven't given us anything to get behind.
Nothing.
And that's the issue. That's the problem. If they do, and by the way, I mean, I think you're shooting at an open goal, because there's been so little done properly that if you start doing things properly, I think then you'll see an upturn. If Rangers start to play better football, the fans will get behind them. If Rangers start to put in, as you say, a few youngsters rather than the same tired faces that we know are never going to be what we need, then those kids will get a wee bit more patience and time than others do. I think we're realistic about what we can achieve this season. It's looking at best, like cups and Europe will be our routes to success, but they're still open. What you can do is, I remember when Rangers brought in, you're too young to remember this, but a lot of the listeners, I'm sure, and viewers will remember this, when Rangers brought in Alex McLeish in December 2001.
I was born in the 80s, David. Of course I remember that.
All right, good. Okay. Well, that just, you've got hair, so that to me indicates a young guy. Aye. Well, we brought in Eck January 2001, and he got the side on a winning run, and he won both cups, although the second cup was played in March back then. But he won both the cups, and that set us up for the following year. So the idea that there's nothing can be done this season is absolute bollocks. In that 6 months, he took this wee outcast striker called Peter Lovenkrands, who by the end of the season was absolutely flying. Lovenkrands wasn't getting quoted for a game, but he put him in the side. And so the idea that nothing can be done now to the end of the season, I think is bollocks. I think you can absolutely say football isn't just about 1 year. Football, it continues. It's always a cycle, right? Rangers need to build for the future. We know this, but they can start doing that and putting the foundation in place over the next few months. Now, the CEO hire is of a far higher standard than, for example, the St Mirren guy a few months ago. And that, I think, it's taken far too long. But I'm kind of pleased that it was John Gilligan and George Latham doing it, because if you look at the candidates that were getting mentioned when it was Bennett that was overseeing it, they were basically mates. Right, and their CVs were nowhere near what this guy's is. Now, I'm not saying this guy's got to be a success. Nobody can predict it, but at least you look at his CV and think he's smart, he knows what he's doing, right? Which feels like a step in the right direction. So that's a building block. That's a foundation. Hire a chairman. That's a building block. That's a foundation. Hire a new manager. That's a building block. That's a foundation. And once we get these things in place, we can move on. We'll still need better players. We'll still have bad defeats. We'll still have games where we're ready to kick. But so long as you can start to see progress never goes straight up, right? Progress goes up and then doing a wee bit, then up, then doing a wee bit, then up. But
a bit like my belly.
Right now, Rangers are just flatlining, and that's the worst.
Yeah. And you kind of touched on it. But the CEO, X-Men, Patrick Stewart, I'm never going to let the jokes go. Right?
I was gutted because the time I got home, they'd all been cracking. Yeah. And you know me, I love a pun. I mean, and it was awesome. And I even was going to go, Patrick Stewart, I was going to tweet out, Patrick Stewart, may the force be with you, just to see if anybody fell for it.
Yeah.
But I thought I'll just let it go. I was too tired.
Yeah, I was going to put out he's going to be the Xavier of us. Oh, nice. Boom. I was going to use that, but then I thought that sounds a bit cheap.
What about he'll bring the X-Men factor?
No, I don't know if I like that.
Doesn't he work? Yeah.
No,
See
I
what I
think
mean?
I think Xavier is much better.
I'm too late on the scene with it. I know
You've missed them all.
I missed the boat. Missed the boat.
You've absolutely, because there was actually a couple of responses from other films he'd been in, but I can't really remember. But anyway, from my terrible jokes aside, is it a coincidence that he starts on the 16th of December? I don't know how these contract talks work, David. Right? I don't know if he's got other stuff on, if he's currently in a job that he has to obviously hand his notice in. You know, for plebs like myself, when you leave a job, you can give them a week's notice. When you're in a big boy's job, it's usually a month at minimum, right? That you need to give notice. All right, I don't know if he's working. I don't know.
At that level, it's 6 months usually.
6 months, yeah. Well, yeah. Usually,
CEO,
it's crazy.
So no, he's not. All right. Well, I'll say I don't know. Right. The only people who know for certain are the guys who did the negotiation and Patrick Stewart. Right. Maybe his representative, if he has such a thing. They're the only people who know. All I'll say is Occam's razor. Sometimes the obvious, well, most often the obvious solution to any question is the most obvious one. And in this instance, I can only imagine it is that. I think that's the reason for it. It doesn't make a huge amount of difference. I don't know if it's him or the club. I suspect it's probably the club. He might have some loose ends to tie up, but I think, it could have been done before that.
See, if that's the case, though, David, right? See, if it is that tells you everything you need to know about the fact that the manager's not got a future at the club. So why leave it to another cup final to see what happens in that? I just don't get the thinking. I don't get it.
If it was me or you, I'd be, and personally, my view on it is that the board might say, well, it costs X amount to sack him. Well, you should stump that up because you gave him the new deal. So
yeah,
that would be my take on that one. Personally, I don't understand it. I just think that if that isn't the reason, then they should have thought that that's how people would take it as the reason. And like I say, I think it is just I don't think, though, here's my take on it for what it's worth. I don't think that the Rangers fans would have held it against him if he'd been in the door 2 weeks and we get beaten in the cup final.
No,
I mean, I don't think anyone would hold it against him. He might have, an early decision to make. Maybe they just, maybe they want to, maybe it's something totally different. And it could be.
It's just there's coincidences and then there's just coincidences.
Yeah. It's impossible not to look at that and go, this is the reason why, right? And if it isn't, then I'm sure they can come out and say it, although whether people will believe it or not, I don't know. For me, they made the decision. When guys at that level take a job, they start on it straight away. Mm-hmm. So even if it's not, he's not officially started, he'll be working on it. He'll be, meeting with people and doing preliminary things, reading reports into the corporate governance of the club, etc. All of that type of thing will be happening. So, yeah, I can only imagine it's, fresh start on that day. But, I think at some point early in his tenure, he's going to have to look for a new manager. Right? I do think I think so, and maybe that is part of it, that they want him to lead that and be the guy who makes the decision there. Because certainly, the indications that they've given out, not just to like us, but to the other press as well, and when I've spoken to people in Manchester who know his side of it, is that this guy isn't taking this job to be a patsy. He's, his condition for taking the job is, I get to run this club, which is as it should be. And then the board's job is to say, right, you told us you were going to do this, 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 and this, is to then evaluate, has he done this, and oversee it, not to go in on a daily basis and say, we think you should do this. That's not your job as a board, believe it or not. Your job as a board is to oversee it, not to put the strategy in place. So, we'll see what happens with it.
And not one single board member is in a position to lecture anybody about how to run a football club.
No, they're bad at it. It's been proven. It's that simple, right? And that's a fact. They have been proven to be bad at it. Hire a professional and let them run it, and then don't then just say we've hired them and you don't take any to do with it. If the guy is running the business into the wall, you should see it coming and you should prevent it and stop it and get in and say, right, but don't countermand these decisions. Don't, tell them to do things or order them to do things. And I genuinely think had we got somebody of the ilk that was being mentioned when Bennett was there, that's exactly what they'd have been done. I suppose I'll put it like this. If we'd hired somebody who was just grateful to get that job, right, then they do that. If you hire somebody who has a higher ceiling, who is ambitious to do well in the job, but has options elsewhere, he's not going to do that because he's not going to see his career torched and burned by your bad decisions. And I think that's what we've ended up with. Took too long, but I think we've ended up with at least somebody who on paper you go, right, aye, he's qualified to take this job. He's got the kind of experience that we need. As opposed to, with the best one in the world, the St Mirren vice chairman because he was mates with somebody on the board.
Who then knocked it back.
And I think he was right to do it because he had concerns about the pressure. Well, that indicates you're not right for the job.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So he was right not to, but he shouldn't have been in the running for it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, was Derek McInnes right to knock the Rangers job back when he did? Anyway, that's a whole different conversation. We could be here all night. 2 comments for you. Firstly, for Gary Miller, right? He's a channel member, so be nice. Hey, Martin, as a fellow bearded man, I go by the mantra, if your dad doesn't have a beard, you've got 2 mammies.
No, I'll explain this to you, lads, and why you're wrong. Beards are for people who've got something to hide.
Yes.
Or Brian Blessed.
Well,
now, if you have something to hide or you're Brian Blessed, you have a beard. If, however, you don't, then it's up to you. Now, Martin, you and Gary, as far as I know, are not Brian Blessed.
I could only dream.
So I'm not going to pry, though. But what I will say is, you need to remember, I grew up in the 80s, right? Born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and my dad is Northern Irish, which means, of course, my family on that side is Northern Irish. So every single one of my uncles was a Northern Irish Protestant. They had moustaches. And, so to this day, like Graham Souness, when Graham Souness had a moustache at Rangers, he was happy and he was doing well. When he grew that beard, he was away a couple of months later. That's not coincidence.
I cannot live without the beard.
I get to actually. It's funny. I shaved today. I tend to have go stubble. I'll tend to go a week without shaving, and then just because then it gets itchy and I take it off. So I mean, hey, listen. If I could grow a proper one, I think I probably would. But I get 2 after a wee while. You need to remember, I'm a very strange and prissy little man. So
you're not little. You're actually deceivingly tall, by the way.
Yes, well, people say they either think I'm wee or fat, and I'm neither. I'm tall and skinny. But look at those hands, right? I'm nearly 50. Those hands have never done a day's work in their life. Right?
Well, it's funny you should say that.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no calluses on them or anything. Look how clean the nails are. So I accept you 2, all joking aside, are more manly than me. I am not the most manly individual. I use moisturiser, for fuck's sake.
Do you know something, right? I don't, right? And I've got my hands are I've got really bad skin. So if I touch a worktop, I've got a rash right up my arm, right? Really, really bad skin. And my missus has told me to start using moisturiser. I just can't bring myself to do it. But I've been told if you use it, it's so good. I don't know how we've got on the topic of moisturiser.
No, these days it's perfectly acceptable to do it. I do it because otherwise in this weather my face gets so chapped. Because I actually have some sympathy for Pep Guardiola. Last night it was clawing at his face. I've got really sensitive skin, so if I scratch myself, you would see claw marks as well. And you don't need to scratch particularly hard to do it. But yes, no, I'll accept you and Gary are more manly than me.
Well, I mean, it's that
but
difficult.
Remember, for years, Rangers had a policy, no facial hair up until soon.
Yes.
You were not allowed it. So that's a Rangers policy.
Yes, it's not a police policy, but your beard has to be perfect.
I think the guy at Wolves, not Wolves, no, Forest.
Yeah.
You can tell how he's doing by if his beard's tidy, the team's doing well. If he lets it go to look like a tramp, his team's doing shite. And it reminds me of Andy Goram's mullet back in the day.
Yes.
When Andy had short hair, he was on it and in great form. Mm-hmm. When he had the mullet, he'd been on the bevy and he was, not at his best.
I played pool with Andy one night in a pub in Larkhall. Yeah, and it's one of them. They say never meet your heroes. He did too much to drink, and his missus was sitting in the corner with a sheepskin jacket and the 18 layers of makeup, and she was lovely though. But he
still the best goalkeeper I've ever seen.
Oh, ever
in the flesh.
Ever. And I was in awe. We were playing pool. I beat him twice at pool, and then we played for a drink, and he spanked me. That's Andy Goram.
But in terms of that never meet your heroes, it's funny actually because I've just been away for a week with Mark and Kev and Jig, and all of them have anybody at Dubai will tell you this, not just me, but all the boys, they've won everything. At Rangers more than once. They've all got multiple medals, successful post-football careers, and couldn't be nicer. Couldn't do enough. You're happy to sit and chat about football. And I think that's something maybe modern players have lost. Like Big Mark was telling me he used to love on a Saturday night after the game that they would divvy up who was doing RSCs, and they would go in twos and right, you're going to this club, you're going to that club, you're going to this club. And he said, and we'd go down a few pints. Didn't get blitzed or anything, but he said we'd stay for a couple of hours, talk to the fans, find out what they were thinking, and then up the road. And then, they would meet up and go into town kind of thing. And he says, modern players don't do that. And he thinks that's something that we've lost. Do
you think Rangers would allow that now?
No, I don't. But I don't think the players would be in any rush to do it anyway. I actually think, though, it would help with building. The players don't need to drink. And obviously, these days with camera phones and everything, you could say to a club, we're going to send 2 players, but if there's any, nonsense, they'll never be back.
They would have to be accompanied by a club official and all that.
But you could do it. It wouldn't need to be the whole squad. You could pick 2. They could do a rota. Say, right, lads, Saturday night, after the game, you 2 are going to Kirkintilloch RSC, right? Mm-hmm. Go for an hour, mingle with the fans, and then you tell the clubs in advance, look, no singing or whatever that's going to get the boys in trouble. And if it happens, they never go back. I bet you every club would respect that. I bet you the fans 100%. Would respect that. But it would also mean that the bond is there that isn't there right now that we're missing.
But they could also, and I know it's not perfect because, there's clubs like you say, Kirkintilloch, or even clubs over in Northern Ireland that it might be quite difficult for some people. But they've got that big, lovely, shiny new Edmiston house building. Why not every couple of weeks or once a month or whatever, get 2 or 3 players for the first team, charge a tenner a ticket or something like that, or a £5 a ticket, or do it through Managerial, whatever, and get a room full of Rangers supporters to ask questions?
I'm currently on a ban from Managerial because while I was away, I couldn't get access to my emails. And I got a ticket for St Johnstone, which is the first one I've had this season. But it passed the deadline before I was able to buy it. So I can't apply for the next 5 aways. And I lost 5 Managerial points. No. I mean, I'm banking rights. That's the rules. I'm not going to complain. I didn't have access to my emails, or I would have took the ticket and I would have been going on Sunday. But first kind of way of the season I got as well. But yeah.
If you want, I know a guy who knows a guy.
I'm
joking.
I can still do the good old fashioned. Again, when I grew up, you get to know people and you do favours for people, and that was how you got away tickets, And there were games you couldn't get and games you could. So yeah, it was typical in it though. The one time I get one, I'm not even here to get it. But no, I agree. I just think that players talk about fans, that. They don't understand certain things. Tell us.
The only guy I know, by the way, is Wilf Marshall. That's the only guy I know.
Oh, Wilf, if Rangers played on Mars, Wilf would get there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I could actually tell you some stories about just the last 2 weeks, but I'll save them for another day.
Well, my favourite story is a boy I know. We played Inter Milan in 2006 away in the San Siro, but it was behind closed doors because Inter, not anything to do with us, Inter fans had attacked the referee with a coin or something previous game. So no fans, no home fans, no away fans. And a boy I know turned up and he wore his bowling club blazer, which had, like the bowling club badge on the chest, and he took a clipboard. I just walked up and he went, Rangers official, and the guy waved him through.
Brilliant.
I know.
Brilliant.
Spectacular, isn't it?
Well, it was Archie Knox told the story, didn't he, about I can't remember. He said his name and the RSC that he was in, but he was up at training, because that was back in the days when Rangers just trained in a field.
In the park, that's right, yeah.
And he says the guy told him all about Leeds, told him all the tactics and all that, all the players, and then he showed up at Ellen Road and Rangers fans weren't allowed in. Or there was only so many tickets or something like that.
Yeah. We weren't allowed in. Neither came, no away fans. And again, I've got a mate, and I've said this to Big Matt last week. I had a mate who blames him for getting kicked out because he'd got a ticket. He worked in Leeds, and he was sitting there, and he said, "Right, keep the heat. Don't celebrate. If anything happens." He says, 40 seconds in, Big Matt rattles in a goal for, just inside his own half kind of thing. He says, "I couldn't help it." Yes, huckled. Immediately. So he lasted all that bother.
It might be the same guy. He was there.
It could well be.
Underneath the Leeds top.
Aye, it could well be. But there's see when we won the league at Kilmarnock in 2011, 3 goals in 7 minutes that day.
Yeah.
Didn't have a ticket for the away end, and my pal, he said, "Right, I'm going to get down to Rugby Park and pick up 2 tickets for the home end. Do you want to go?" I says, "Right, no bother." So we're walking up, and our mates are going to the away end. They go in there, and we're walking in. So 2 is are like that, right? Scarf under the tap, tied round, keep the heat. If Rangers score, just a wee, elbow kind of thing, and we'll, no bother, right? But was it 30 seconds? Ball over the top, big laugh at he lobs the keeper. We went, yeah, oh! But then we looked round and 80% of the stand was Bears. It was amazing. And then they actually moved all the Kelly fans to the other end and moved all the Rangers fans down. If you watch that game, easy 3/4 of that stadium was Rangers fans. It was absolutely amazing.
And not too far away for you either.
Kelly, no, but it's an arse to get to from because I don't drive, so I need to take public transport to places. So Kelly's actually a pain in the arse to get to for me. But our next home game's Kelly anyway, isn't it? December the 4th, I think.
Yes,
next Wednesday.
That is
next Wednesday. So we'll not be here next Wednesday. Although we won't be here next Wednesday. We'll be here.
No, we won't due to be here. No.
Yeah, no. But it would be. We'd be sitting doing this, and the game would be going on in the background. We'd probably get fined by the broadcaster for.
Probably. Well, I mean, if you want to give up your ticket, I'll take it, and you can come on here, and I'll send somebody else on with you.
One of the boys from my season ticket, because I do the press box. One of the boys takes my season ticket every week, which is he does all right at it. And when you think of the amount of money that we have to spend in sponsorship at the club, I've got the most expensive fucking season ticket at Ibrox, I think.
You really do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what is it this year? We're putting in, I think, 46 grand or something. So, yeah, it's, I grudge him it. But then this season, I can't even grudge him it. I give him it for free, and I feel I'm overcharging him.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of are, to be fair. You should actually be giving him money on top of that just to go. Sorry, I meant to bring this up and I completely forgot all about it. Yes, he's not going to be the chairman, he's going to be the CEO. However, test video, the wheel chairman of the board. Is that a good pun?
Oh, yeah, Professor X.
Yeah.
The wheel chairman. Yeah, I get where he's coming from. I'm giving him points for that because I can see how he worked that, and I think that's clever. I think that deserves an acknowledgement.
See, because I know the guy, and he's a bit.
You always do this. right? You always, people are kind enough to send in opinions and stuff and watch us, and you go, I know that guy, and you never give them credit, right?
No,
so
never.
I'm willing to do this if somebody, he did well there, and I think he did. No, you take. I liked it even if Misery got Martin, didn't he, mate?
Well, Gallant Pioneer, the guy who you're referring to, not test video, Gallant Pioneer, the last time we were on, he photoshopped my face onto Donald Trump and said, "Make Rangers great again." So he's getting no praise.
My stepdaughter, when she was in America during not this election, but the one Trump won previously, right? I'll just show you something. So I'm going away, but I'm going to come back, right? And she thought, I'll bring David this present.
So for audio listeners, David has now stood up off his seat.
Yes,
he has walked away.
And
he's now talking to himself in the background as well.
See this?
Donald Trump milk chocolate. Brilliant.
Yeah. Donald Trump milk chocolate. Yeah, 46th president.
That in the fridge, just in case.
I'm not going to eat it. I keep it, but she knows I collect presidential stuff. So I've got some cool US president memorabilia. And
there's another show, David. I'm into my US politics. There's another show.
On Heart and Hand, there's a film of every US president, because during COVID, I did American history as part of my uni thing, and I've always been fascinated by it. So I said, when COVID hit, and obviously there's no games, just for a joke one day, I said, I might finally get around to doing that US president show. That was threatened about. And then the next day I was getting all these emails. I'd listen to that. So yeah, there's a show on Heart and Hand called Hail to the Chief, which is from Washington right through to Trump, but and it was like, I think it was a few years ago now. So it stops just before Trump because it's not been long enough for it to be history yet. Still really current affairs, and you need to have some time to do it. So yeah, you get my thoughts on biographies and all the presidents.
I've got one question for you that's I've always thought about, and it's a stupid question, right? And then we'll finish up, and we're finishing on American politics, folks, and I don't care, right? 45th and now 47th president of the United States. Can you be the 45th and 47th?
Yes, because there's a precedent of when you were elected, and also he's the second president to have two non-consecutive terms. The previous guy was a guy in the 19th century called Grover Cleveland, who won in, 1884, lost in 1888, and then won in 1892. And he is considered, he's got two numbers as well. So, yeah.
No, see, I would say not. He's the 45th president. That's it. Boom.
I get where you come from, but look, it's the Americans. It's their system.
Well, I mean, this is true.
You know, they are people who have their national sport is called football, and it's a game in which you throw the ball to someone's hand. So, you know, what chance have they got?
And the least important player in that team kicks the ball.
The ball. The guy that's on 50 quid a week and a packet of Haribo kicks the ball. Exactly.
Remember that team? There was a team in Glasgow, Claymores.
Oh, the Claymores, yeah.
Yes. I'm sure one of them, I'm sure the kicker for them got over at the NFL. Look, we're going away in a tangent here, man.
Yeah, a few NFL Europe players have ended up over, and a couple of rugby players for UK have ended up over there as well.
Actually, I went to see the Claymores a couple of times when I was younger.
It was always a good day out. No, I was the same, but now I think the kind of European league sort of died away because the NFL come to Britain every year, and more than once, you know, they do like 4 or 5 games at Tottenham Stadium, so everybody can go and see one. So like the need,
and finally, just smudge in there with the super chat. Thank you very much, Martin and David. Much appreciated.
A pleasure, my man.
I'm really talking to you, David. He's not talking to me.
No, it's very grateful that people will take time out their day to come and watch us.
And you bet your arse I'm getting a message off David as soon as this finishes going, you owe me £2.50.
No. What? This is your site. You keep it. I'm quite happy to take people's money, but that was donated to you, not to me. So fair's fair.
To be fair, your name is in it. Your name is in the comment.
I suppose actually you can buy me a Diet Coke next time you see me.
Right. Well, Coke
Right.
Zero. Diet
Coke-
Coke.
Yes,
Coke
Coke
Zero.
Zero. No, you're right. That Coke's minging.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Coke
agreed.
Zero's a bit.
Coke
Right.
Zero.
Anyway, before we talk any more nonsense, we'll leave it there, folks. Because I know that David wants his shows to finish before 8 normally, so he can go and watch the Champions League.
Liverpool
Not me.
Real Madrid. No, it's tonight. I'd like to watch Liverpool Real Madrid just to see how Trent does against his new club.
Well, I'm saying, listen, we could be here all night. Right, folks, thank you very much for watching. David, thank you as always. That's
Pleasure,
episode
guys.
number 5 now, by the way.
Is
We're
it?
getting there.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting there. Maybe we could do episode number 6 for Dubai
Well, they
on the
have
Heart
said.
and Hand private jet.
Well, they have said to me about going back next year, so we'll do an episode for Dubai. I was planning to go to Nice this week, but family stuff, I just couldn't. After being away, I couldn't do it twice. So it would have been done from Nice this time. But when we play Manchester United, we'll do it the night before. I'll do it from my hotel in Manchester, and that's.
Well, I'm half Manx, so I'll join you. Not in the
All
hotel.
right, perfect.
Not in the hotel.
No, not literally. No, I mean that would be weird. But well, you technically will be joining me in the hotel room.
Well,
Technically, yeah.
back to yourself. People will start talking. Anyway, thank you very much, David. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll speak to you all very, very soon.